This is Mona Lisa Baseball.
One of the things I've imagined in Latin American countries is kids might not go to school, but they'll wake up and sort of create a field, and they'll get all the neighborhood kids and they'll just make up a game. You know, it doesn't matter if it's got equidistant bases, like none of that matters. Just like use whatever field you can find. And then they get to play for the joy of it. Do you see that when you're traveling around, just kind of kids scrapping around, having fun playing the game of baseball or wiffle ball? Or
No, not really.
That makes me sad.
Most of the fields that you come across there's a guy who's like, hey, what's going on? This is my field.
Yeah.
And it might be his land. It might be public land. Maybe he takes care of it, but there's these operations that are all over. What you're thinking of is more common with basketball or soccer, at least in the DR, because it's just easy to play pickup, and there's more and more basketball courts around. Soccer less so, because it's just a lot of space and takes grass that's short enough, and it rains there all the time. If you don't mow the grass, you're not playing soccer on it because it's going to be crazy. But you're not going to see what you see like in the favelas of Brazil or just places in Buenos Aires of kids playing soccer with a deflated ball. That I wish it were that way. It sounds much better if it were that where kids are playing baseball for fun, because they watch it. Back in the old days of Pedro Martinez and all that, like, it's appointment viewing. You know, they're big Yankee fans, big Red Sox fans. They love their native sons, and they'll have it on. They're baseball crazy. But as far as like kids playing, unfortunately, they're just kind of elbowed aside by a guy being like, no, I'm going to open up a training operation here, and I'll take you and you and you. And this guy looks tall, bring him over. All right. And a lot of times it's just a lot of complacency with parents who just, they don't have two nickels to rub together. So they're just like, all right, yeah, like my kid can go practice with you. And they kind of try to professionalize their operations. Like you'll see kids wearing jerseys of the guy whose facility they train at, and they'll walk home from it like walking home from Little League, but it's like, yeah, I train with this guy, and he's put this guy with the Nationals and this guy with the Dodgers and this guy with the whatever. So it's like, it's just not the same as like kids having a great time playing ball.
Mm-hmm. Whenever you're too busy being an adult, you can draw back on your old childhood wistful memories. You're like, oh, remember when we'd just be like, we need one more? It's like, go knock on Ryan's door, and it's like, oh, I forgot Ryan. All of a sudden you got a game. And that could be your next 4 hours.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I can't believe I don't have to be doing homework right now. Like, oh, it's just the best. It's the best.
Yeah.
And I always picture Dominican Republic, just games everywhere. Everyone just baseball crazy. And it's so much more depressing, your version.
Sorry, dude.
Did it used to be that way? Maybe a long time ago.
Probably. I think before a lot of the 16-year-old signings and everything came through, and they came there through the sugar plantation communities, they would play pickup against each other. And then it became like kind of like in Japan, like the corporation had a team and fielded a team and would go play this other corporation. But I think that all trickled down. They do play Vitilla, which is like basically like a broom handle, and they throw the top of like a 5-gallon water jug like a frisbee, and these kids hit that, and there's a game. It's kind of like straight ahead, and if you can pick it up before it stops spinning, it's a single. And then there's all these like rules. That's kind of neat. They will play that a little bit just for funsies, but honestly, I cannot think of a place that I've seen where kids are just hanging out and playing, and there's not a bunch of dudes looking at it with dollar signs on the tallest kids.
The tallest.
Sorry, dude. I mean,
I can't tell you how
a downer.
No, this is amazing. Amazing stuff to hear, because I don't remember where the phrase came from, but to me it was like, this is why we do this show, is I want to get to the heart of the matter. I want to get to the heart of the matter, and everything I'm hearing from you, that qualifies. You hear it all the time, and it's not meant to be derogatory, but it's like the Latin American takeover, where you go, well, how come there's not, black players anymore? Where's all the American kids? And I always think of when I was growing up, you would see kids on the street doing it. Mm-hmm. And I know times are different now with video games and phones, but it's when you can go like several years without ever seeing one pickup game in California. I feel funny about that. I think, well, why wouldn't a kid want to do that with his neighbors? And, it might be because you live in a house where you don't know your neighbors. I grew up with that just being commonplace, is you know who the neighborhood kids are. That's not necessarily how it works now. But thank you for sharing all that, because to me, it's just a really important part of the Major League Baseball story is this.
What steps is MLB taking to improve the lives for these kids?
Quite a few. They're protective of their investments. So the MLB office in the DR has grown substantially and has some really great people working for it who are looking out for the problems that will befall both the player and the organizations that sign them. So they're extremely strict on age and identity stuff. So if you're signing a kid you think is 16, but he's using his cousin's passport or birth certificate and he's really 19, that's not great, because you can sign him, train him, think that he's 16, 17, and then the second you send him to the US and he gets that higher post 9/11 level of scrutiny, they're going to be like, nope, those aren't his fingerprints, like, get lost. Or if same with PEDs, if he gets popped, they're like 50, 100 game suspensions and stuff now. So they take a really hard line on those two things, and they've done a great job hiring a bunch of law enforcement folks and attorneys to work in the office in Santo Domingo. And to a degree, they've actually done really well in terms of educating players once they get signed with an academy, which is great and admirable. I would argue it's sort of late in the game. So once a guy's like 16, 17 and he's not been in school for 5-6 years, it's hard to be like, oh, well, now let's learn some grammar. And it's like, and you see it, it's really basic stuff. Like, they're trying to teach him English, because ultimately, like, if a guy is performing well, like Ellie De La Cruz, right, signed, I don't know, 16, I'm sure. I don't remember his amount, but it was a small amount. And then he grew, like, he has a twin brother, and he grew like 8 inches above his twin brother. Whoa. Once he started getting fed properly by the Reds Academy. And a guy like that gets fast tracked to the minors, gets sent to the US. Like, they're basically like, we got to get this guy speaking enough English where he can figure out how to order food and like listen to his coaches. If they're like, a guy from Texas or Florida who speaks no Spanish is center field and this guy is in right field, like, they got to be able to say like, hey, I got this, or, let's take 5 steps back for the next play. Like, you got to be coached. So a lot of the English instruction ends up being very practical, like, my name is, like, that kind of stuff. But you're just like, let's give them the tools they need. So MLB has done well with a lot of specific teams taking the investment to treat these folks like the professional athletes that they are, and the human beings that deserve a proper place to sleep and to shower. And if you go back to when I first started reading about this, like, the horror stories with certain teams, and like, these are pro franchises in MLB that would have academies that were, bunch of guys sharing a room, no air conditioning, no doctor on site. Like, a lot of this stuff we just wouldn't tolerate at any level here. And you can't really tell MLB owners that much. They kind of do their own thing, and the commissioner works at their mercy, works for them. So you can't be like, hey, here's a draconian rule. All teams must, make their kids pass high school equivalency or they get waived or whatever. They're going to be like, no, we're in the business of winning baseball games. Like, sorry. Like, so they've gotten a lot better, and team by team, they build a new facility to replace a crappy old one, or they have some Americans come down and start working with them. Like, the Mets had an amazing program a couple of years back where they were taking college kids from the US and doing a study abroad for a semester, and mostly women. And they were learning Spanish. They were, whether they were athletic trainers or education majors or whatever, they would do classes in English, or they would tape up ankles and do stretching, but they were getting college credit. But they would also basically be like an RA for these kids and an older sister figure, where they were like, listen, if you get sent to play minor league ball in the Midwest, you cannot whistle at a woman the way that you might do it here, or she's going to slap you, or you got to learn how to order food, or else you're going to go hungry, or you got to identify with your teammates and share your culture with them. So like, let's get you figuring out American music. And Like just knowing that that's the goal, and we got to at least prepare you to be there. So the teams have come a long way on the things that matter to the league, which is protecting their investments. But I think a lot of them have gotten smart about it and said, if we want these guys to be successful at the next level, we have to address it where they are. We have to meet them where they are and do a better job of kind of holistically training them, and not just as baseball players, but as humans. And preventing injuries is all great. Nutrition is great. Healthy habits like staying off Facebook at 2 a.m. and that kind of stuff. Like that's all part of it. And I think every team I've heard from has been good at it in different ways of like getting their guys to that next level. So there's a lot of progress, but I also think, like anything, we could do a lot better.
I'm going to assume you grew up a Red Sox fan?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. How far were you growing up from Fenway?
About an hour and 10 minutes.
That's about pretty much similar to me. I would like to just know, what's the best Red Sox game you ever went to?
Ooh, it actually was not in Fenway. It was 1990 in the Kingdome in Seattle. And we were out there visiting my dad's Army buddy, and the Red Sox happened to be in town. And I will have to look it up after this because it's going to bother me and I won't be able to sleep tonight. But I think Dwight Evans hit a go-ahead home run in the top of like the 14th or something like that. And anytime you get to drop Dewey Evans in a podcast, you do it. So,
oh man, yeah, I never heard Dewey. I do remember Dwight Evans, and my first World Series that I remember is Red Sox Mets. And I don't remember the ball going through the legs, but my main memory of that time and being 7 years old is there was a camera showing the dugout and there were players crying. And I'm assuming this is the end of Game 7. And I was asking my mom, why are they crying? Even I knew at 7, there's no crying in baseball, where I'd never seen this before. And she's trying to explain it. And she goes, they were just so close to winning and they just didn't. And as I've watched Ken Burns baseball and watched the whole 9th inning on my own, I think my mom did a really good job of describing to a 7-year-old, like, yeah, sometimes there is crying in baseball. Yeah. And I didn't know about Red Sox history or any of that. And her main sentiment was just bless their hearts. And it's just like perfect mother talk. So do you remember that World Series and how it kind of felt in your area?
Yeah, we do. And it was very bad. But I will say, without that, 2004 would not have felt as cathartic and euphoric as it did. And it was just an incredible thing to be in that area. I was living there at the time. It was right before I moved to San Diego for grad school. So it just was a perfect storm of just finally getting that.
You got it. You move west. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the worst Red Sox games I went to was actually that same year. It was the 19-8 loss in Game 3 of the ALCS for the Yankees to go up 3-0. I was at Fenway for that. And we were all like, oh. And then they rattled off 4 in a row and the rest was history. But what about you? Did you grow up an A's fan or Giants or both?
Definitely Giants. There was Canseco McGuire was going on, and there was a lot of kids in my school that were going that direction. My dad was all Giants. And so, I had Will Clark, Kevin Mitchell, so I was doing fine.
Yeah.
A's, I think I went to 1 or 2 games, but it was probably like for every 20 to 30 Giants games I went to, maybe an A's game mixed in because maybe my friend was into it. But I did get to go to Fenway once. It was a dream for me. We got a picture with the Green Monster behind us. We were kind of on the first base side before the game. And I had that most surreal feeling of, I think I've been here. And, it's all the times you see it on TV and in movies, whatnot. But there was a visceral feeling of,
go the distance.
Yeah, go the distance. I was thinking all those thoughts. And it was Red Sox Yankees. I got an opportunity to move from maybe row 80 in the right field seats to row 2 right near the foul pole. And I saw these guys. Pesky's pole?
Pesky's pole. Johnny Pesky.
I saw 2 guys get up with their jackets. And I go, it's now. And we went down there. And guess who's warming up about 50 feet from me with a 1-run lead going into the ninth? Mariano.
Ooh.
So I got to heckle him.
Oh, nice.
And they told me to shut the hell up. Not the Yankees, the Red Sox. I did not see this coming.
Wow.
And I was basically telling him how he was going to cough it up. And he did. And the Red Sox hit 2 doubles in the 10th. Red Sox win. And the whole stadium's chanting, Yankees suck in August. It was like, that's my Fenway game. I'm down.
That's so fun.
It works for me.
You don't need to go back. That's the pinnacle. Like,
oh, man.
Mariano, too. Wow. I mean, come on. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was great. And then a friend of mine had said Wrigley's way better. And I eventually got to go out to Wrigley, but he went before the 2 Jumbotrons. So we went last year. Me and Russ went out there with his brother. It was an experience we had to have.
A2.
Excuse me, A2. Oh, yeah. You're A13. So one of the reasons why the show's anonymous is because I started to get this feeling that there were important baseball voices that would not criticize baseball because they didn't want to be blackballed. I want people to be able to talk about baseball and say whatever it is they need to. And I think the very, very beginning for me was when the 4-pitch intentional walk turned into he goes to first base now. And I remember thinking, I don't like that. I don't like that. I've seen enough highlights of things getting funny, especially in the playoffs. You got to walk a guy and there might be a guy on second and third. And now you got to do that play where you get the ball in the catcher's mitt without throwing a pass ball and the crowd starts getting nuts. Like, that's a real baseball thing. They took that out of the game like that.
Yeah.
I started to get nervous at that point, and that was, 10, 15 years ago? The avalanche that's happened since then. I think baseball is played at its best when it's the game of baseball that lasted for 100 years, and I would love to see that restored. So that's kind of a reason of why we're here right now.
I'd like to get an idea of how many kids go into these programs. Like, do you have a rough idea of, like, if I'm an athletic young boy, I'm 10 or whatever, what are the odds I'm going into one of these programs?
Depending on where you live, most of the boys are going to do it.
That's shocking.
Unless you have to go make money in an immediate way, which is like selling mangoes on the side of the road or trying to shine shoes, or like any of that kind of stuff. Most of the young boys will be doing it. And their school day used to be, I think they're expanding it now, but they used to go to school in shifts. So elementary school would be either morning or afternoon, so you go to school from like 9 to 12 or 1 to 4. And that's not enough for a kid. So I don't have a figure on it, but like if you go into some of the more rural and impoverished areas, it's going to be over 50% probably of kids that are just like giving it a go.
The majority.
And yeah, probably. And then like if you're not athletic and your family's like really poor and you've got to like go find water or food, it's a little bit different. But like if you look at like a typical 3rd or 4th grade classroom, there's going to be some kids who are like, oh yeah, that guy is really uncoordinated, like forget it. But the ones who would be little leaguers or play CYO basketball or Pee Wee football, they're all going to be in this pipeline. Almost all of them. Yeah. And that's why they're good. Like, don't tell me that Juan Soto is, I mean, he's amazing. Like, but it takes a lot of people going into the funnel to have a Juan Soto come out at the bottom, because he's just, his eyesight is amazing. I mean, baseball is so peculiar where like you don't have to be big to do it. Like you can just have fast twitch muscles, really good speed of burst and that kind of stuff, and amazing eyesight and the ability to like think about what pitch might be coming and look for it and hit it the right way and miss the fielders. And that just takes a lot of time and practice, and it's a very refined skill set. So there's tons and tons of kids who do it. They don't all make it. But yeah, it is pervasive.
I'd like to present to our audience that out of all of the major league players right now, 10%, over 10% of them are from the Dominican Republic. It's the second most common country of origin for baseball players besides the United States.
Damn.
Yeah, and it's not because they love baseball. It's because they have all the international academies are there. Now there's Venezuelans, there's Colombians, there's Panamanians. They all get sent to the Dominican Republic when they get scouted.
Oh.
And you're starting to see a lot of guys from other places. Like there was a guy from Germany at one of the academies we went to, a guy from Spain. And we're kind of like, what are you doing here? And basically they're just like, if you're tall and you can throw, especially on the pitching end, because it's easier than like hitting a baseball, which is like one of the hardest things to do in sports. If you can just like train your arm and throw a couple of pitches and throw hard enough, man, you can make millions of dollars. So like a lot of these guys are like, sweet, I'm 6'4", I'll give it a go. And if it doesn't work, all right, go back to Germany and go to school or whatever.
God, that is just fascinating to see what the designated hitter can like change an outlook on a career. When you were going through the tools of you don't have to be big, you can have fast twitch muscles. And the next thing on my list is Anna Cannon. And it's like, DH, like you don't need a cannon anymore if you got all the other things. Okay, where do you see baseball fitting in on the global sporting scene? Is the growth of it working? Is it going to expand?
Great question. I am really hoping, but not confident, that MLB players will get to play in the LA 28 Olympics. I would absolutely adore the Ohtani Trout redux. I just don't know that the 30 MLB owners are going to be able to get there from a risk management perspective, which sucks because they're robbing the world of that amazing thing. And they're like, well, just play in our made up tournament that we created in 2006. Like, the Olympics are the Olympics. I mean, these guys, like, can you imagine the patriotism of American baseball players? To be an Olympic gold medalist would be absolutely amazing for these guys. And I think a lot of the other countries too, like the Dominican Republic is still thrilled about their WBC victory, and Japan, same thing, like Korea, Korea win? No, they were runners up. Sorry. But once the US cared about it, the only time the US cared about it was the last iteration. And basically the last two. Am I right? Like to 2019, did they care? Not really.
Do Americans care about WBC? I mean,
but did the players show up? Because I know like Trout and Harper and those guys played in 2023, but I don't know that they even showed up in 19. I don't think so.
It's highly contingent on how they feel in terms of like injury prevention. That's still the biggest factor there.
So I think that would be amazing to grow the game worldwide. I think there's tremendous potential. 2009, I went to a baseball game in South Africa in Cape Town under, the shadow of like Table Mountain, and they play it around the world in very small pockets, but those guys are very long shots to make the majors because they're just not practicing enough. And it's a very, very highly skilled game. It's not like football where you can take a giant rugby player and turn him into an O-lineman or a kicker guy and punter. Like, it's such a specific skill set. I wish that MLB owners were more invested in the global growth of the game. I just think it's going to be a challenge. But if you look at the NBA, like before the Dream Team in our lifetime, there was not a lot of global NBA. And then how many of the last MVPs were from various parts of the world? And the NBA is just like swimming in money as a result. So I'd be really curious to see how MLB thinks about its global future and its strategy.
Oh, they think about it all the time. And that's why you've seen so many rule changes too, is they're so jealous of what the NBA has done in a country, say like China.
Yeah.
The money there, the jersey sales, all of it. It's a real windfall. And MLB is confused as to why they can't replicate that. And a lot of them have given up too. I think a lot of them have kind of said, well, this is a regional sport. We've tried for 100 years to expand it outside of where it's popular already, and we failed.
That's kind of what I was thinking, is like, does the layperson in Europe, if they don't care by now, like what about baseball would make them care? Okay, it's 2.5 hours, not 3. does the random person in Spain flip through the channel and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like let's get down with this. I just don't see that happening.
You need a Yao Ming type character. You need Chinese baseball player. You need a German baseball player who's a star.
I mean, they tried. They had that $1 million arm thing that like somehow became like I didn't even watch it, like a John Hamm movie, but like they tried signing guys from India that were like cricket bowlers and were, they didn't really make it.
Snap your elbow. It's okay to snap your elbow.
That, yeah. You're just going to need surgery.
They were all balking all the time. Yeah.
I love the World Baseball Classic when it came out, but I'm just also like, oh man, it shouldn't be in March. You should shut the season down for a week and like figure out a way, maybe play the prelims and then have an extended all-star break every 4 years. Like get them when they're healthy, get them when they're in the zone, and like make the world watch. Honestly, March, at least in this country, we're all watching March Madness.
Yeah.
Like everybody tuned in for the Japan USA, and that Ohtani Trout at bat was one of the coolest sporting things I've seen in a very long time. But like, it was on like a Wednesday night or whatever in March. Like we were all kind of worried about the tournament. You got to pick your spots, I think. And it's just very difficult to get people on board that time of year for baseball. Like if you blew up and you owned July and August and you had a major global tournament, or they'll wise up and let the Olympics fly and see what happens.
Yeah. It's really fun to hear you talk about this because I don't really share those opinions, but I'm definitely catching your enthusiasm, and it's like pretty intriguing.
Yeah. I mean, Dominicans are pumped. Like when they can win like a world championship in something, they are like just gaga. And it's like, all right, I don't personally own the Red Sox. Like John Henry owns Liverpool and the Pittsburgh Penguins, and probably at some point the Vegas NBA franchise. Like I don't really care if a guy gets hurt and John Henry has to like take a hit. Like, okay. Yeah. Like I want to see this game grow. Like I feel like people will be stoked about it in Brazil. And I know Africans who play baseball and are like jazzed about it. Like, cool. Like that would be way more important to me than like 30 dudes watching their portfolio grow and have their assets not get hurt. Like, I don't care. Sorry, that was a little crass. But I don't want the players to get hurt, but like,
I'm gonna have to convince the owners.
Ultimately, what shuts that down is like, no, I own the Yankees. You can't do that.
Yeah, when Madison Bumgarner wanted to be in the home run derby, and they're like, no, we're not going to do that. And you go, are you kidding me? You have a chance to have a pitcher in it? No, we're not going to do that. And I wanted to slap someone.
Yeah,
who wouldn't want to watch that?
The only person who doesn't is the person who's like, well, it'll hurt my bottom line. Look, I understand sports are a business. It's been my career for a very long time. I hate to speak so ill of Major League Baseball owners, but like, I don't know, like
it's definitely okay on
and like
show.
Scrooge McDuck with the big room full of gold coins. Like, I don't really think, it's just like you're still swimming in coins. Like, it's good. You're fine. Like, you can sell the team tomorrow and someone else will buy it and it'll keep going up in value. Like, it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
813, you can talk shit about the owners on this podcast anytime you want.
Just let it flow.
Very welcomed.
Yeah, you're not going to convince the owners to break up the season. That's lost revenue for them. There's no way they're going to do it. We got a scheduling conflict. I mean, I'm with you. I would love to see baseball in the Olympics in that way. And I'd also like to point out that I was rooting for that DR team when they won against my own home country. Why? Yeah. Because who doesn't like an underdog?
Totally.
Yeah.
We all love the underdog. When the underdog wins, that's the best thing in sports. Like, that's why you put Madison Bumgarner in the home run derby. That's why you cheer when the Red Sox, who lost so tragically the year before that, win the next year. Yeah. That's why it's so great.
I'm with you. And what it meant to them, that country was just like losing their minds. And here in the US, it was like, what?
Page 3 of my newsfeed, yeah.
If you walked around your neighborhood, was anyone even tuned in? It was.
I didn't even know it happened. Yeah.
No.
Lifetime baseball fan had
until this podcast. He didn't even know what the WBC was.
I do, and I've seen the pitch that struck out Trout.
Yeah, fair enough.
I wish I would have been excited about it. I would love to have your enthusiasm for baseball like you have right now. The only place I get it is old books. Like right now, I'm reading Roger Angell. It's a book called 5 Seasons, and he basically wrote for The New Yorker and wrote X amount of articles for 5 different baseball seasons in the 70s. Cannot get enough of it. One of them is 72 and the next is 73. So in each one, he's talking about when I guess they're going to come up with this designated hitter next year. And then in 73, he's talking about it like, well, I don't care for it. And I don't know how long it'll last. Like, oh, that stuff's fascinating for me.
Open your wallets, folks.
I wanted to slap someone.
They want that cheap resource.
I feel funny about that.
Get lost.
That's like one of the wildest baseball stories I've ever heard.
Perfect.
If you can just like train your arm and throw a couple of pitches and throw hard enough, man, you can make millions of dollars.